Welcome to Real Herbalism Radio, show 289, recorded at Big Dog Studios in Eugene, Oregon. Today's show is made possible by The Practical Herbalist. Herbalism is easy when you take a practical approach. At The Practical Herbalist, we've got loads of researched, tried and true tips and techniques to make herbs part of your daily life. Learn more at thepracticalherbalist.com. Mud Pot Design House. Ideas are great. They're what businesses are made of. If you have an idea and want to make it a business, you need a website. MudPotDesign.com makes websites for idea people every day. Now here are your hosts.
I'm Candace Hunter.
I'm Patrick Hunter.
And welcome to Real Herbalism Radio. I love talking to Leslie.
You know, it was very kind of like one of the rare herbalists that was like just really doing her own thing, down to earth, what she wanted to do. And, just that one example of mint, she said, well, I don't like peppermint, but I like chocolate mint. So she's going to make everything work around that.
She's so chill, and she's so clear about what she wants to do, and she doesn't push anybody else to follow. She's just like, I'm doing this. And honestly, a lot of things she does are great. They're creative. She formulates beautifully. She's got heart.
Yeah. Meeting her, she contacted us for some design work. That's how we initially found she'd answered one of the many ads that we put on for Mud Pot Design House. And so she contacted us, and we have been doing labels for her. And one of the things that she does for her labels is talks about being that, that individual is she goes out and she has a couple artists local artists in the area that she actually commissions them to draw or paint the piece that goes on to her tea blends. And it's really kind of cool because each one is its own thing, and it's unique.
Yeah,
and,
it is.
The first time I saw it, I was like, what? But as I saw her whole thing, now when you see a whole brand of them, and if you went to the Real Herb Market, you would see all of her tea blends, and you'd see all the different artwork that has been used on her different blends. And, and the artwork obviously reflects what the mood or what the title of the product is, so if it's womanly, there's a woman there. If there's stomach upset, there's a thing that focuses on the stomach. And there's one with a volcano, I remember, I think that was a stomach one. But anyway, I just, again, that was a little bit different than so many other herbalists that I've seen with their packaging, which is, there's nothing wrong with this. It's, it's the standard, their logo and their thing, and then what it does, It's not, this is like this piece of artwork that's in your cabinet, and then you pull it out, and then on the back of it, it says, this is what it's for, this is what it does, so it's kind of a treat when you go to your cabinet to pull out your herbal tea blend, because you've got this little piece of artwork. Yes. And they're all bright and colory, and they're very in your face. Cool.
Yeah. Even the Solace tea one is beautiful. I mean, it's they're healing. The art is as healing as the blends.
Oh, sure. So, right. Yeah, absolutely. So I think that was like one of the cool things about her and her approach. But I think that's where she is now. It's obviously not where she started and not how she began. And we all have that. We all have a story. I mean, we have ours, and you have yours, and she had hers. And I think she brought up perseverance and working through those things. I mean, she's had some challenges. Oh, yeah. We all fair enough. We all have challenges, but she has some challenges. I mean, she had a near death experience. With her kid when she was young, and that obviously fomented or formed what she was dealing or how she was moving forward. And she had a loved one pass and recently, so that was another thing. So she's had all these things happen. I think this really formulated how she was moving forward.
I think that we all have our reasons to get started with herbs and herbalism, and some of us are pushed or nudged by family or tradition or community because that's what we grew up with.
Or
so
calling,
So it's a natural path. Mm-hmm. And then some of us are called, like you said, and those of us who are called may be called to move in that direction from a personal life experience, or you just have that longing and something inside of you keeps calling you. And you might have to move through. I mean, we've met many herbalists who grew up in really traditional Western medicine families like KP Kulsa did. Mm-hmm. And something, the calling was there. And then he had a life reason to, physical reasons, health reasons to explore for himself. And it just blossoms from there. Some of us don't have a calling and we didn't grow up with it, and we just find ourselves gazing at the pretty, pretty pages of the books and reading about herbs and herbalism. And that's, legitimate too. We sit there and we sit in our armchairs reading our books and poring over it. And there's some part of us, I think every single one of us who does that, there's some part of us that says, I want to do this, but I don't know how. I'm reading how, but like, for instance, when I first started using herbalism on a bigger scale was when we moved to Oregon and our son hit his head,
right.
And I had been reading about yarrow for deep wounds, and I had learned from Dawn about yarrow for deep wounds. And I knew that you could do this intellectually, but in the moment when there was an actual emergency and there's blood gushing from my kid's head and we didn't have insurance, and you were saying, oh my God, we've got to take him to the emergency room. And I'm seeing us financially having some serious problems because of that, knowing there's yarrow in the cabinet, taking that step, it was hard. It was hard to choose to do that.
Well, yeah, because you had to go through that, remembering you had yarrow.
Yes.
Figuring it out, what you needed to do. But then you had me going, the freak you talking about yarrow?
Yeah, you were
He's got a puncture wound.
You've got 10 minutes to stop this bleeding.
Yeah, I was
exactly what you said to me.
Because, my mind is like, okay, he's got a deep cut and those are stitches.
Yes, and you've had many of those when you were a child.
So that's what I've got the face to show it. but so that was okay, we got to get this done. And I do remember saying, you got 10 minutes to make this work. If it doesn't stop in 10 minutes, we're going.
Yeah. Yeah. And so put on the kettle and I boiled up a small amount of yarrow tea and we put it on, and sure enough, in 10 minutes, the bleeding was significantly decreased. And I think within 20, we were down to the point where it was not really bleeding.
Not only that.
And then the wound ended up closing up over the course of however many more days it was. I don't remember.
Yeah. The thing that you had said with yarrow is it's going to do this and it'll be barely a scar. And I didn't believe you.
No, you didn't.
Like, and I
don't blame you. I wanted to believe it, but I needed to see it happen too.
Right, because we'd heard even with this Dawn telling us stories of people that would have road rash, on a motorcycle or bike.
Yeah, she has a really wonderfully dramatic story about a motorcycle accident.
And that's like just pulling. I don't know how it does it, but just like pulling out, the things. And the interesting thing that reminded me of in the last 10, 15 years of since this happened, really.
Yeah.
How many times I've seen on television shows, movies, people talking about poultices, people talking about yarrow, people talking about all these things to use for these injuries.
Yeah.
And they're more, a lot of the shows are not like modern, but they're, in the modern zeitgeist. I mean, like Vikings, the Viking show, for instance, or Grimm was one where they were using stuff, so they're using all these herbs and using these terms. And, in 2004, whatever, when this happened, I was like, or 5, whatever, like,
Pulse to what?
Pulse to what? And I didn't know. And you were like, and I gave you that space against everything that was telling me, get your kid to the emergency room because he's bleeding. Now, okay, head wounds bleed. Just so you know, people,
head wounds bleed a lot.
It doesn't matter what they are. I mean, a little pinprick and it's bleeding. But that being said, I was freaking out,
Oh yeah, so, rightly so. I mean,
and you did it. I mean, you stuck to your guns. You did the pulses. You made the bleeding stop. Finn, our son, was better for that. And then there's not a scar. Now, granted, he was 3 or 4. So
yeah, he was like 4 years
I mean,
old.
I would have ventured to guess, because of his age.
I don't know. You've got a few scars. I know were from.
I have a big one under my chin that was 5. But to give the doctors credit, they had to pull skin together to make that happen.
Oh yeah,
so it was a thing. But anyway. So that was really, I mean, that was really the second time that herbalism really came into us taking care of Finn.
Yeah. But the thing is that when you're reading about the herbs, you read about how they can do all these magnificent things, these dramatic things, like the head wound for our son and the yarrow. But it's hard to, in the moment. I mean, you're in the middle of an emergency. Honestly, it was I am still amazed to this day that I thought to use our yarrow, and I think it's really the lack of health insurance at the time that made me stop and pause, because I knew how big that hospital bill would be. And I just did not want to spend what money we had at the time on a hospital bill if there was a better solution.
Right.
And it turns out there really was a better solution in that case. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm not encouraging people to not go to the hospital when needed. I'm just saying
again,
that lack of funding is what overrode my emergency brain.
Well, and here's the thing too, is that yes, we could have gone to the doctor. Yes, we were in the emergency room. Yes, they would have taken care. They would have given him 4 or 5 stitches.
Yeah.
He would have had a thing. It would have been this whole deal. It would have cost us probably $2,000.
Yeah.
Which would have been,
for us at the time, we didn't have $2,000.
So I think, one of the things that I would, you think about it, how many centuries, how many millennia have we been running around this planet without quote unquote modern medicine?
Right.
And being able to fix issues like a puncture wound, like an arrow, like whatever, with herbs and herbalism and proper bandaging and cleaning out and taking care of. Our body is amazing to heal it. Now, I'm not saying you're not going to have a scar.
Right.
It's not going to like make it all better pretty, but it'll heal it.
Yeah. It's not like Star Trek.
Yeah.
They just wave a little wand in front of you and
scar gone.
Yeah.
That's not the case.
No.
At all.
But I mean, honestly, modern medicine doesn't have that either. So.
But it's interesting. The next time that we had an emergency, we were cider pressing, and Finn was 4.5, maybe 5.
Yeah, it was a few months later.
And we were out and about, and it was a warm day, and it was early fall.
Yeah.
And the apples are coming in. We went to a friend, so we'd never done this before, so we did a cider pressing, and Finn's out there playing and doing stuff with us, and he's the only kid there. And I don't know how it happened, but he got stung like 4 or 5 times in a row by bees. Yeah. Which happens when you're cider pressing people. You're going to get bees.
Yeah.
And he was like, and he was crying and everything. But the first thing that you did, and I mean, I even at that point, it was like, I know plantain will work here.
Yeah.
Something I knew that. So we and I were finding plantain because it was there.
Yeah.
And we were grinding it up in our mouths, and we were putting it on his wounds. And
the farmers are looking at
our
us
hosts
like
the farmers and our hosts are looking at us like, what the hell are you doing? I'm like, no, this is what you do for bee stings.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
sure enough, a little bit later,
there's this, whether it wicked the venom out, whatever it did, it would just.
It did what it does.
It did what it does.
Yeah.
And he was back playing again.
Yeah. After you've broken through the first time where you overcome old training and actually reach for the plants for an emergency, the next time it's easier, and it becomes easier and easier and easier.
Right. It's that and I think you're right. It's like you're getting through that threshold.
Yeah.
And going back to what Leslie was saying, is persevering through those ideas and moving it forward and keep going. And, I would say when you're approaching armchair herbalism to becoming an herbalist, get a core 4 or core 5 herbs that you want to learn about.
That
and
helps.
learn about those and what they can do, and then start branching out to these other things. I mean, you may want to know about ashwagandha because that's what everyone's talking about, right?
Yeah.
But in your daily life, look at what's around your home.
Yeah, look at what's close by and what's easy for you.
Do you have dandelion growing anywhere in the house? Do you have wild lettuce growing anywhere in the house? Do you have yarrow growing anywhere in the house? Do you have plantain? Do you have what was the other one that we have in our house? It's in the back.
Calendula?
No, well that's a good one. But the wild ones that are growing up by the trailer, those tall little bad boys, they're mucilaginous leaves. The
goldenrod isn't really.
No. These are the one mullein. I think it's mullein.
Oh yeah, the mullein.
The mullein. Yeah. So there's mullein. I mean, we're just in our little, and these are like, you planted the calendula
planted, but the mullein
came in, and there's like, and it was really big and healthy. So you're like, I'm taking those leaves.
Yeah. And I said thank you.
Right. And so just around our little plot of the earth, there is just so much herbalism and
available.
Herbal plant life that can help you. And granted, fresh plants are best, but when it's in the middle of winter, you may not find a fresh plant. But that's why you can dry them, and you can do all the things that you can buy the herbal blends from people. I mean, if you don't have access to the stuff, there are other people that do, and they provide those things, and you can get them.
That is so true.
You know, you can go to you know, the herb market and order tea blends from Sassy Llama or any of the other people, whoever you like.
Yeah.
You know, if you're looking for a specific herb, they might have it for you. I mean, remember, we do have multiple growing zones in our country, and just because you're in, you know, the middle of the country and it's 40 below out doesn't mean that somebody down in California or Arizona or whatever isn't just growing that or has it, you know, and it can provide it to you. So we do have that luxury now in our modern society that we didn't have back in the day. But back in the day, we did other things like tinctures and vinegars. Oh yeah, you know, all those other things that you do. But you know, coming back to those 5 herbs, learning about those 5 herbs and how you can, you know, use them in many different ways. It kind of reminds me of spices in Indian cooking. Yeah, you've got one spice and 9 flavors. Yep. You know, you got one herb and you've got multiple ways to use it. Right. And just learning those ways. So.
Yeah, it's one of those things that we talk about, making friends with the herbs or making friends with the plants. And a lot of times when herbalists who are experienced talk about making friends with them or having herbal allies or herbal friends, it's about the fact that, you know, you grow yarrow and you've gotten to know yarrow, and you aren't just using yarrow for fevers and head wounds. You start using it, you know, topically, like Anna Rosa talked about, for acne. Right. You find ways to incorporate that particular plant into your lifestyle and into what you do. You know, you don't, you know, like Leslie, she doesn't like peppermint, which, you know, peppermint's a pretty intense digestive herb. Right. Chocolate mint is a lot more gentle, but it's still really, really effective. Yeah. So make friends with chocolate mint, as she's done, and use it, you know, all over the place. Find ways to just be friends with the plant. And the more that you're friends with it, the easier it is to think about it or remember it when a situation arises where that, you know, like our situation with the head wound. You know, I was already friends with yarrow. Right. I'd gone out, I'd found it, I'd used it for a variety of things. I remembered, you know, my mom grew it for a while when I was younger. So I was friends with yarrow. And when the emergency happened, yarrow pretty much called my attention. And then, yeah, it took some perseverance on my part to get over, you know, I kept, you know, because I was fighting you, I wasn't letting you see how much the doubts were on the edges of my awareness. I was worried. I was concerned that this wouldn't work or that I wouldn't, you know, do it right somehow. And I just didn't let you know because you were too, if you saw even the smallest weakness, I knew you would have just been like, whatever, I'm out, we're taking him. And you would have swept him out of my arms and run off to the hospital. And I wasn't going to let that happen without giving Yarrow a fair chance, because Yarrow was a friend. And it worked out in my favor this time.
That's true. That's true.
I have a new bookmark for you to add to your browser, therealherbmarket.com. This is your new go-to for all your herbal products. It's your one-stop shop. You can peruse the many stores from verified herbalists from around the country, allowing you to shop locally if you prefer, or to get an herbal from an herbalist that specializes in products you do not have access to. Visit therealherbmarket.com to shop for your next salve, tincture, or tea. Then make sure to bookmark it and come back. See them again at therealherbmarket.com.
So I think, you know, I ran into somebody the other day that is a stylist by trade. That's what they do. And they informed me that they were going to become a master herbalist. And they know that I'm, you know, in the herbal industry, not an herbalist, but, you know, in the industry, if you will, because of our, you know, our media conglomerate that we have here.
You're a home herbalist.
You know, and you know, I was talking to her and I said, well, you know, that's a big step to go from where you are right now to a master herbalist. I mean, that's 8 to 10 years, most likely.
It's a lofty goal. Yeah.
You know, I said, you know, and I didn't get to dig deeper with her, but I was wondering, and she said for her, it was a calling. And I was wondering, and I didn't have a chance really to talk to her because, you know, 20 minutes with a haircut and that was it, was why, what catalyst formed that you thought that made you, this was your calling, this is what you wanted to do. And you were willing to go through the process to do that, because it's steep, you know? Yeah. I mean, we talk about it all the time. I mean, you know, the training and education involved in becoming that, you know, master herbalist is every bit as much as getting a doctorate.
Oh yeah. I mean, to be a master at herbalism, you're looking at people like Phyllis Light and Matthew Wood
and Rosemary
and
Gladstar and
Rosemary
KP
Gladstar,
Khalsa
yeah.
and all the big names that we know of. I mean, these are what we would consider the master herbalists.
Exactly.
You know?
And there's a lot of big names that we know of that aren't truly masters yet.
Not yet.
Like Rosalie de la Forêt. She's well on the road and she's going to become one.
Right.
She's very good.
Yeah.
But she doesn't have the experience to be a master yet.
Right. And
it takes a lifetime of experience.
Yeah, masters. I mean,
would Da Vinci have called himself a master when he was in his 20s, 30s, 40s, even 50s?
I don't think, I think if you asked a master herbalist, just as you ask a master martial artist,
they mostly,
what they will tell you is, it's a rank, but I still am learning. I'm constantly learning. And that's really what makes, I think,
that's what makes
a master. Master is, that you don't know.
You just know how much you don't know, and it's an awful lot.
Yeah, and that's the biggest thing. I remember when we were going through martial arts, and we were like, oh, when I hit a black belt, it's like I'll know everything.
Yeah,
and no, you get to black belt, and it was like, well, now we can teach you stuff.
Now it's just beginning. Yeah,
now it's going to get real.
Yeah,
but it took 4 or 5 years to get to that point where you can say, now I'm at this point.
Yeah,
they don't have to teach you all these. The basics anymore.
Yeah.
Right. Because you should know those. You've graduated. You should know these things. Yeah. Right. But then you get out and you're like, oh, I'm in the real world now and I have to learn all these things. It's it's really the same thing as any really career. You go to school, you learn all this stuff. It's all book learning. There's some practical experience and some not. And then you get out in the real world and you're like, oh, fudge, I don't know anything. you know? So anyway, you know enough to know what you don't know, and that's what you start to build from there. But I think it's great that people want to continue to do it, and I'm happy to see herbalism and herbs and plant getting, I don't know if it's a resurgence, or a new idea, but it's so interesting, running into people now that I never would have considered using plant medicine, and they're like, what is that? I want to know about it.
Yeah.
I had a conversation with some ladies the other day about kratom. They had never heard of it. And
right.
Wow, really? Okay, so let's have a discussion. So we did. And, they were, okay, do you have a little sample? And I said, yeah, I can get you something that would be good for you.
Yeah.
And they're excited. But, it's those types of things, talking about it openly,
Yeah.
And understanding that, they're not cure-alls. And oftentimes it's not, like you said, it's not going to be instantaneous,
right.
Recovery. Yeah. It's a softer approach, but so, going from that, like, again, going back to that armchair to doing it it takes a lot to get out of the armchair because the armchair is comfortable.
It does. And one of the good steps that you can take, like Leslie suggested, is start with some teas. Make a few teas for your cabinet, couple, ones that you enjoy.
Mm-hmm. Don't
worry about so much, are you trying to cure the common cold with this tea or prevent heart disease? Don't worry about that level. Just make some teas that you enjoy. And after you've made a tea or two that you enjoy, maybe you've got some chocolate mint, some lemon verbena, and some, passion flower in your tea. Enjoy it, sip it, and then think about what does mint do for you? What does passion flower do for you? What does lemon verbena do for you? Get to know those plants a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Enjoy returning to them regularly. Then the next time you're finished with your holiday supper and your stomach's a little bit full and you're thinking, dang, I should not have eaten so much. Maybe reach for the tea that's got the chocolate mint in it because you've already learned that it's good. Oh, and the lemon verbena, also good for that. Maybe not the passion flower as much that day because you might already be falling asleep due to overeating. You don't need more sedation, but
right.
But the lemon verbena and the chocolate mint will do you well. Maybe add a little bit of something else like some ginger to it, to spice or fire it up a little more.
Yeah.
Yeah. But if you've made a few teas and you're used to drinking them and you've taken the time, maybe while you're drinking them, to read a little bit more about it, think a little bit about the plant, then the next time you feel a discomfort, it'll be easier. Because it's about building neurological pathways. It's about building the brain structure file system essentially in your brain to remember this stuff, right?
Yeah.
So build it by starting with something that's pretty easy, make them a part of your life just, in small ways. and take the time while you're enjoying them or using them or working with them to think about what they do. Because that'll start building some of those brain waves or those pathways.
Absolutely. Well, so do you have, so anyway, if you want to reach out to Sassy Llama, you can find her on therealherbmarket.com. She has products there. All right. So we do have a question today, or for this show, if you will. And let's see here. All right, here we go. So this is our question. It comes from Valerie. Valerie asks, what is the best way to measure when making a tincture?
That is a really good question. That is something that I definitely got caught up in and questioned what I was doing a lot for the first years of medicine making.
Yeah.
And part of it is because you've got those ratios.
Okay.
And it makes it confusing. So 1 to 5, you're going to make a tincture of
1 part.
Let's say chocolate mint. We're going to make a chocolate mint tincture.
Okay.
And the book says you do a 1 to 5. Okay, so is that one is the herb, 5 is the menstruum or the liquid that you're going to put it in.
So
in this case, an
vinegar
alcohol.
or alcohol.
Yeah, in this case, we're going to talk about an alcohol, but this goes for all forms of.
Okay, glycerids doesn't matter. Okay,
right.
Okay.
So does that mean it's 1 to 5 volume to volume? That was what I kept getting caught up on because I kept thinking they had to be the same measurements.
Right, because the liquid is a volume measurement, and like your mint's going to be like a bulk measurement, a dry measurement.
Right.
Right. Okay.
Yes. And the best way to do it would be to go with a scale for your dried stuff, like your mint in this case, or whatever the herb is that you're using, and a volume for your liquid, like the alcohol that you're using.
Okay.
When I first got started, I didn't always have access to a scale. It took us a while to actually invest in a decent scale. So I did volume to volume at that point.
Okay.
As I got better at medicine making, I started doing the mass or weight of the plant to volume of the liquid.
Okay.
And that pretty much is the way that we are taught as professional herbalists or as herbalists. That's how we're trained.
In this case, 1 ounce of mint and
1 gram or 100 grams of mint.
Okay.
And then
500
grams or 500 milliliters of alcohol.
So there's your 1 to 5.
Yeah, that's your 1 to 5. And I'm using metric because that's really easy to calculate.
Very easy, guys. It's only tens. It's easy. You make money, you can make this.
Yeah. Metric is much more easy to calculate. But if you're like where I was at when I was first starting, I had quart jars and I had home tablespoons and cup measures and things like that, but I didn't have a scale. And I didn't necessarily always have measuring cups that measured in metric accurately, because metric starts to get kind of precise and home cooking utensils are not as precise. So I calculated using ounces and US standard imperial, I think is what it's called, system.
Right, imperial system, yeah.
As I've gotten further, I've invested in things like I bought some beakers off of Amazon for, I can't remember, it wasn't very expensive.
Right.
But that's given me metric volume measurements. And I've got a scale. I can use the metric grams. So I definitely recommend, if you're going to make a lot of tinctures, move in that direction because it's just easier. But if all you're doing is making medicine for home use and you're not planning to sell it, and you're not planning, maybe you'll give some to your friend because, their kids could use it too or whatever. If you're doing that sort of level of medicine making, you don't have to use metric. And you don't really have to use a scale. You can get by with volume.
Yeah, you can use measuring cups.
Yeah.
Because, like it goes back to the beginning of our podcast, which is getting up off the thing. You start somewhere. Exactly. And, if it's a 1 to 5 and you've got measuring cups and stuff, you just pack it in there and get your volume that you need for your mint and then do the same thing with your liquid. Here's the real fun part about this is like in home use and that kind of stuff, it's really not that precise. You don't have to be
you don't have to be
dead on accurate.
Yeah.
You don't have to be, oh my God, this is not going to pass, the governing body's ordinances on what is in here.
Right.
It's for home use. You can make it stronger if you want. You can make it weaker if you want.
Yes.
There's variability in it.
Exactly. Yes.
So,
yes.
enjoy the process
Yes.
and not as much about getting hung up on the amounts.
Yes, exactly. The one thing that I'm going to say is a little bit different is when you're working with honey. In most recipes, if you're talking about a couple cups worth of honey or less, it's going to be most likely the recipe will be written for volume.
Mm-hmm.
So a cup of honey or a tablespoon of honey or whatever. If, however, you're looking at like mead making, then you're going to be measuring in weight. And depending on who you're buying your honey from, you may be buying it using weight or you might be buying it using volume. Oftentimes, the honey you buy at the grocery store is measured in volume. Not always, but often. Oftentimes, when you go to the farmer's market and you're buying honey directly from an apiist, did I say that right?
I'm not sure.
Beekeeper.
All right.
Then you're most likely going to be buying your honey based on weight, weight rather than volume. Use your best common sense as you're working with honeys to measure as makes sense for what you've got. Personally, I tend toward weight because now I have a scale, and I will often, if I'm going to make, let's say I'm making a syrup, I'll often put the pot on the scale, and the scale I have has a nice metal top. So if I need to, I can even put a hot pot if I've already warmed things up. Let's say I made a strong infusion to begin with, and now I've strained it and I put it back in the pot, and I'm going to add the honey and just keep it warm enough to get the honey to fully dissolve because I want a really, really thick, strong syrup rather than a thin, watery one.
Right.
So then I might put the pot on the scale, and then I might pour the honey directly in and use weight to measure my honey rather than volume, just so that I don't have to try to clean out my cup measure.
Right.
Because I'm kind of a lazy herbalist in that way.
Okay.
But you don't have to, it's all about practicality and what works for you.
Yeah, there it is. Practicality.
Yeah.
All right. So with that.
All right.
Okay.
Put an herb on it.
The statements made about herbs and products on this podcast have not been evaluated by the United States Food and Drug Administration, FDA, and are not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent disease. All information provided on this podcast or any affiliated websites is for informational purposes only and is not intended as a substitute for advice from your physician or other healthcare professional. You should not use the information on this podcast and its affiliated websites for a diagnosis or treatment of any health problem. Always consult with a healthcare professional before starting any new vitamins, supplements, diet, or exercise program before taking any medication, or if you have or suspect you might have a health problem. Any testimonials, questions, or case studies are based on individual results and do not constitute a guarantee that you will achieve the same results.